So our next, we're getting on to the, I was going to say meat to the program, but with our low-carbon vegetarian thrust, it would be the heart of the program of celebrating success. And we're going to start first with a presentation on the Bike for Good project, the VeloCommunities project, which was awarded the 1,000th project, which was given last year. So not only are we 10 years, but we're now surpassing 1,000 projects. So I'd like to introduce Shagufta Answar from the Bike for Good and also Ben Twist from Creative Carbon Scotland to introduce the project and their film, and then we'll have a short panel discussion afterwards. No, please do come up.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. I'm a little bit nervous, so please bear with me. So what I'd like to talk to you about is the work that Bike for Good do, and particularly some of the projects that we've delivered and the one that we're currently delivering. So Bike for Good, we were founded in 2010. Our vision is, I'll probably need to stand in front of here. Our vision is a city where everybody benefits from cycling. And our mission is to enable people to cycle as their main mode of transport. So we are split as a charity and a social enterprise. And on the charity side, we run a number of funded projects, VeloCommunities being one of them, where we basically get communities cycling. So we've got a number of initiatives coming up later. On the social enterprise side, we take donations of old bikes, we love them, and we sell them on as refurbished bikes. We do maintenance classes, we do fix your own bike sessions, we sell second-hand parts, new parts, accessories, everything to kind of try and become sustainable so we're not constantly relying on the funding. We also work in partnership with Next Bike, so we manage the Next Bike scheme around Glasgow, and we've now recently launched in Edinburgh as well, which is the kind of cycle hire scheme. And we've got a team of 52 members and 25 regular volunteers. So of those of you that have been to Glasgow, this is the Southside Hub at one of our many busy events. So previous CCF projects, so we've delivered a number of projects already, and as has already been mentioned, we are the 1,000th project to be funded with VeloCommunities. Some of our previous work includes Better Way to Work, Dr. Bike Plus, which worked with employers, and basically getting employees to start cycling through lead rides, through cycle training, through maintenance classes, etc. Our second main kind of project over the last couple of years has been Unicycle, which is working with 8 of the local universities around Glasgow, getting all the students to focus on cycling as their main mode of transport. And then more recently, it has been Bike Academy through Velo Schools, where we worked with a number of primary schools and secondary schools, just focusing on young kids and getting them to take a more active form of travel. And this is some of our young kids. So VeloCommunities, which is the current project. So we've got 2 main outcomes. One is to increase active travel from motorised transport, and the second is to increase people's awareness of climate change and for them to increase their ability to take action on that. We work in 2 main communities, so we have a hub in the west and we have a hub in the south, and those are the communities that we're working with. And currently in those areas, 35% of people choose to travel by motorised private transport. The aim of this project is to reduce carbon emissions by 2,695 over the lifetime of the project, and we're funded for 2 years, so we're kind of 8 months into that. This is one of our busy maintenance classes with, I think, some young people. Okay, so how will we do this? So we will do this through a number of ways. We will do this through cycle training, which is teaching people to cycle who are complete beginners, or confidence rides for people who are cyclists but want to take it a little bit further and want to start commuting by bike. We will do this through allowing them to become sustainable through maintenance classes, and then fix your own bike sessions, where they come and they're able to borrow our tools, take advice from our mechanics, and basically fix their own bikes and become a lot more sustainable and not have to rely on expensive servicing and repair costs. We do a number of free pop-up Dr. Bikes across the city, so mainly kind of focused in the 2 areas where commuters have the opportunity to come and bring their bike, and we will give it a quick check and fix kind of minor things and basically direct them to other work that is required, basically keeping them cycling. We have a free bike loan scheme, which is probably one of the most popular things. So we're people who want to start cycling as a form of commute, but don't have either access to bikes or are looking to get one but don't have one at the moment and they don't really know how to get about. We offer them a bike loan for anything from a couple of hours to a couple of months to allow them to see how cycling fits into their lifestyle before they make the purchase of a bike. And we help them buy a refurbished bike or sign them up to the next bike scheme and basically enable them to cycle by providing a bike. We do lots of bike breakfasts and cycle training with schools. We don't do that on our own. We do that with working with Sustrans, Glasgow City Council, and the Active Schools Coordinator, because there's lots of primary school and secondary school children. We do travel planning workshops, so if somebody comes to us and says that we want to travel by bike, we look at different routes for them to go between their home, their workplace, shopping, etc., etc. We hold lots and lots of events. There's lots of people that currently aren't interested in cycling and totally understand that they're not going to come to a ride, they're not going to come and get lessons. So we do lots of events, we do film nights and various other things where people come in and they start engaging with us, they start chatting to us, and slowly we get them round to our way of thinking, which is by getting on a bike. Okay. So, our second outcome, which is to increase people's climate awareness and ability to take action on climate change, we're doing this through a number of ways. So we are planning on holding quite a lot of workshops over the next 18 months. We hold regular talks and film nights. We've already held 4 or 5 film nights in the last 8 months. We have already done some assemblies at school, and we've got a lot more planned where we're working with some of our local schools to focus on climate change, focus on active health. We've been part of health fairs to help them do that. We are planning on holding some faith-based discussions in our 2 areas. There's quite a lot of action going on with different groups, and we'd love to be able to link up and look at what different faiths say about climate change and how we can take action on them together. And lots of low-carbon style bike tours, which is basically just kind of connecting up your local city, your local environment, all by bike. This is one of our trips, which I think Ben will talk about in Creative Carbon Scotland session. So one of our trips to Butte with the young kids that we've been working with. So who is our community? It's local people, it's local community groups, it's local businesses, schools, and it's the local councils, and it's anybody who basically wishes to cycle. 8 months in numbers. So, our 2 busiest components have been bike loans and cycle trainings. We have offered 347 bike loans in the last 8 months. We are teaching lots of kids to cycle in schools, and we've worked with 172 kids already. We have 799 hours of cycle training. Now, that is an awful lot. We've got a very, very small team. We've got lots of wonderful volunteers and sessional workers, but that is where the biggest growth is, because that's people that are the next future generation of cyclists. We have serviced 541 bikes at our doctor bikes, at our maintenance classes, at our fix your own bike sessions. And 98 people have come to our film nights, and they have been, I think some of them are on later on, they have been about climate change, they've been about cycling organisations, they've been about active travel. We have done lots and lots of rides with 180 bums on saddles, and we've lots of participants to our maintenance classes. And overall, in the last 18 months, we've interacted with 4,819 people, and you can understand how hectic we are, but we love every single one of those interactions. Our social impact, so we're helping to reduce car travel, we're helping to increase people's awareness on climate change, we are improving people's mental and physical health, we are increasing the number of training opportunities for local people. So that's just some stats on some of the people that we've put through some training programs. So cycle trainer assistants, ride leaders, first aid trained, mechanical training. We're offering a lot of volunteering opportunities, and one of our volunteers is in the room with us. So if you get a chance to chat to us, that's brilliant. And we're encouraging bike donations, and we're planning on doing a lot more of that in the next 2 years by holding bike amnesties, particularly in the south side, which we haven't been as prevalent with. So what's next? So one of the major things that we want to focus on over the next couple of months, first of all, is an iCycle website. So it's not branded Bike for Good. It's a website for Glasgow-wide cycling organisations. My colleague Helen, who, can I ask you to raise your hand or stand up? Helen is heading up that part of the organisation. So if you're a project in Glasgow that is offering cycling or doing any cycling activities, please come and have a chat to us. We'd love to be able to work together on that. Maps, we'd like to produce some maps for the west and south, basically showing people all the different cycling infrastructure as it's changing. We have one in the pipeline, and so hopefully they'll be printed and ready in the next couple of months. We're working hard to apply for the Cycle Friendly's Communities Award. It's a lot of work, but we're quite excited about some of the prospects, particularly within the south on that. The Southside Hub, those of you who know it, we are moving, hopefully in the new year, to a bigger premises, just so we can offer more opportunities for cycling activities to more people. South City Way, so that's the local kind of cycling infrastructure that's right in front of us. So it's in the early throes of development, so the part of it's done right in front of the hub, but there's a lot more work of that being done. But it's opening up a lot of conversations with people who wouldn't normally cycle, who are seeing it happen. There's a lot of new cyclists on there, so it's really an exciting part of Glasgow to be in. E-bike loans, so we've just recently bought some e-bikes, 2 cargo bikes and 3 normal e-bikes as part of our bike loan scheme, and we're launching them at the moment. So for some of our users who have ill health or maybe a certain mileage that they can't do for work purposes, we have some e-bikes that they can borrow and try out and see how that affects their abilities. And lastly, we were trying to work with local organisations and helping Sustrans promote the small grant fund through South City Way. So that's just some of the exciting stuff that we've got on just in the next couple of months. Any questions? Brilliant. Fabulous.
Never try and follow Shagufta when you're doing a talk, I think. Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. My name's Ben Twist, and I'm the Director of Creative Carbon Scotland. And Creative Carbon Scotland has been working with Bike for Good on a project that I'll explain to you shortly after I've introduced CCS. We're a charity that works across Scotland, connecting the arts and climate change to achieve the just transition that the Minister mentioned a while ago. Our work is based on the understanding that climate change is a cultural issue as much as it is a scientific or a technological one. And just to explain that, culture in the widest sense is the diverse ways in which we live in the world, from the food we eat to the ways in which we educate our children or the beliefs that we hold. Culture in a narrower sense is the arts, what we often call the arts, is an expression of that wider culture. Art reflects culture, it holds up the mirror to society, and it offers us the opportunity to question it and change it. Our wider culture, that way in which we live in the world, is at heart a culture of consumption. And it is this that has produced climate change. We consume a vast amount, we chuck stuff away, and climate change is the result. To address climate change, we argue that we need to change our wider culture, our way of living, and the arts offer a great tool to do this. You're all doing that in the Climate Challenge Fund projects, and the arts is another contributor to that. And we argue that the arts help society think, help society understand itself and explore different ways of being. And a good way to describe this is the arts help us imagine a different future. We're looking at a very different future, again, as the Minister was touching upon. And we need to understand that, explore it, and move into it in a very challenging way. At the other end of the process is how we practically make the changes to the world. And here, artists themselves, and by this I mean artists of any sort, from painters to writers to filmmakers to craftspeople, also have a great deal to offer. Most work on climate change is led by technologists, scientists, economists, all of whom are very wonderful people, and I'm sure there are some here. But the work that we're doing is not enough. It's not going fast enough. We're not achieving the transformational change that we need. And we need new ideas and new ways of working. Artists, in their training and their trade, learn and use different ways of thinking and working, and can bring to the table, the climate change table, much needed skills and experience. If you've ever seen a good panto, and there may well be one around the corner here, you'll know that artists are very good at developing the transformation scenes that happens in a panto. Artists are good at transformation. That's what they do, that's what they're trained to do, that's what they're experienced at doing. And in our Culture Shift program, we help this transformation to happen in a different way by bringing together people who work on climate change and people from the arts. And if you go to our website, creativecarbonscotland.com, and look up Culture Shift, you'll find more details about that there. Now, getting on to the Bike for Good project, early this year, the Scottish Government asked us to work with them to employ an artist to document the 1000th Climate Challenge Fund project, which turned out to be Bike for Good's VeloCommunities, which you've just heard about. We agreed, we're very keen to do this, but we said, well, it's all very well just documenting a project, but the moment you involve an artist in the project, it'll change it. Things will happen because of the different skills, the different knowledge, the different experience that they bring. And I think that's what's happened, and Shagufta may be able to tell us if we have enough time for questions and answers later. Lewis Hetherington is a theatre maker who's been embedded with the project, and he started back in April, and he's there for the whole 2 years. He should be here now, speaking about the film I'm about to show you, but he's gone down with a bug. So I'm afraid you're going to get me instead. So I'll introduce the film that he's made with his fellow artist, Geraldine Heaney, Bike for Good, and the VeloCommunities participants. And just to reassure you, perhaps, that this is not just an idea that I've cooked up in Edinburgh with Creative Carbon Scotland. There's actually a great history of artists working on sustainability projects, projects throughout society. And if you look at the Resources tab on our website, creativecarbonscotland.com Resources Library, you'll find a fascinating new thing called the Library of Creative Sustainability. And what that provides is just a few at the moment. There are about 8 case studies, I think, but we're building up the library of interesting projects, the successful ones that we think in the past have shown how artists can work in other sectors of society. And the good thing about this is that it's aimed very much at people who are working not in the arts, but in those other sectors of society. So if you're involved in flood prevention or carbon reduction or whatever, you can look up a project that will be relevant to your project and take a look and get some advice about what other people have done and see some interesting examples. That's who I am, just in case you need to write to us. I like the minister, I'm going to say, do get in touch with me. Seems a very risky thing to say for a minister, but there we go. But do get in touch with me. Just a little bit now about the film before we show that. And by the way, you're about to see the premiere. It's an absolute first. The red carpet was missing when I came in, but it should have been there, I'm sure. This is a taster. It's about 4 minutes long, and it's made just after a few months of the project. Lewis has been attending VeloCommunities events, as we've heard about, and himself he's been relearning the pleasures of riding a bike. I think Shagufta will agree. He wasn't a keen cyclist when he joined, but he has become an absolute addict. He's got to know the Bike for Good team and many of the participants, and you'll see in the film. This short film is the precursor to a longer one that he and Bike for Good will use to build awareness of the project with the wider community. And just talk about the next stage of that, because the film will tell you everything about the current bit. Lewis and Geraldine, the filmmaker he's been working with, will work with the participants to help them learn how to use the cameras that you'll see they've used here on their bikes and their helmets, some terrifying footage. They'll also help the young people to develop interviewing skills so they can do filmed interviews with everyone from parents to friends to shopkeepers to politicians, to asking them to think about Glasgow as a cycling city and what it would be like and how to build it. And they'll work on a program of personal pledges with the participants filming people making their own pledge to help turn Glasgow from being a high-carbon, car-based city, as we've heard, to a zero-carbon cycling one. And they'll combine these 3 aspects to make a longer film celebrating the project. And one thing that Lewis asked me to stress from his sickbed, and this absolutely sums up the beauty of involving artists in this sort of project, is the way in which the learning of the residency, the artist residency, flows in many directions. The young people are learning about climate change, carbon reduction and adaptation. They're learning about cycling and about filmmaking and interviewing. But also their imagination, their vision and their passion inspire and provoke imagination, passion and vision amongst the experts, Shagufta and her colleagues, and the decision makers who are building the world that those young people are going to be living in. The artists, as non-experts, non-decision makers, but people trained and experienced in unlocking imagination, help that to happen. I have no doubt that VeloCommunities is already a very different project and is contributing to making Glasgow a very different place. And I'm going to say now, I'm going to wave to my colleague over there and say to you, actually before I wave, can you turn the lights down on the stage? Enjoy the film.
VeloCommunities is the 1000th project to be supported by the Climate Challenge Fund. It's a Glasgow-based project to reduce carbon emissions and tackle climate change by encouraging people out of their cars and onto their bikes.
My name is Shagufta Anwar. My role at the Bike for Good is Development Officer, and I basically kind of oversee and run the hub and all the different projects that run within that.
So Bike for Good is a charity and a social enterprise, and essentially we're everything to do with getting people cycling. So we have the social enterprise side, and the other part of the business, which I'm very much involved in, is projects, so actually delivering cycling to communities. So our vision is a city where everybody benefits from cycling, so we will deliver any project that gets people cycling essentially.
We train and sometimes you do skills and sometimes you play games.
A couple of different clubs that run, so we've got an after-school bike club that runs on a Thursday, and Govan Hill is very diverse. It's got something like 40 plus nationalities and languages spoken, etc. So you can just imagine the kind of hot pot of community that comes to that.
I went to the trip, the beach.
Yeah.
I like the cycling, like so fast. We have the picnic, sandwich. Went to the beach. Yeah, I played football, ice swimming.
So it was really, really beautiful to be able to see them flourish, a group that we'd regularly worked with, and be able to do that.
We're going to go beach. You know what time is it? It's beach time. Let's go.
Bike for Good. Anyone, because it's for kids and for high school people and teenagers. But tell me who? And sometimes adults. And your friends can come.
So the VeloCommunities project particularly wants to get people cycling. So our two main aims are A, to get people out of gas-guzzling vehicles of some sort and get them out by bikes, giving them accessible bikes and teaching them to cycle. And our second outcome is to raise the awareness of climate change and everything that's going on around it, and how people can be inspired to make change.
It makes people healthier, and sometimes it makes you calm, and it makes you feel nice.
So how is it different from going in a car?
Because the smoke comes out and it's bad for the walls, and bikes don't have that.
Currently, transport is the largest source of CO2 equivalent emissions in Scotland, with road transport accounting for over 70% of the transport total. The need to shift away from motorised transport to sustainable modes is urgent.
We're doing this film because we want to celebrate Bike for Good.
He's winning his birthday, so see you later, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
What would you do if you were king of Glasgow?
I'll be nice to people.
Oh, that is a great plan.
Well, I think everybody will agree that's a fantastic film, and there's one thing I've gotten out of that. I definitely want to go get that ice cream. I want to go swimming with those kids and go on one of your bike courses, for sure. But now's a chance for questions. I'm hoping that a mic is going to miraculously appear, a handheld mic. But it's time for you to put questions to Shagufta and Ben about either about the project or about the film, communicating climate change. So please, hands up. And anybody? There you go. Right, and here at that table. Is a mic coming?
We have one here, yeah. Thank
you. Yeah, first of all, thanks. That was a really interesting talk, and the video was amazing. One of the, I think maybe the biggest barrier in Scotland to recycling, in my mind, is that we live in the not nicest climate in the world. What do you think we can do to, encourage people to cycle in Scotland and be a model, say, like a Netherlands or a Denmark or somewhere which also has these challenges but seems to not be a problem? How do you think we can get past that challenge of the people who don't want to be outside, It's great that we get these kids involved, they're active, it's fantastic. There's maybe a majority of people who are much harder to reach. So how do you think we can get to them and get over barriers like laziness and weather?
Through a number of different ways. So we work with low-hanging fruit first, which is kind of what we started off at the hub, so people that are enthusiastic about cycling. And people seeing cycling will normalise cycling. We had in one of our other projects, Pedal Pathways, a photo campaign to normalise women on bikes. And we took a lot of pictures of lots of really lovely ladies on their bikes. And that campaign has been so popular, and the vast majority of people that we're working with is women, which is why we had a specific project. So it's about normalising cycling first. Secondly, touching upon the weather, we're all-weather cyclists, so what we do is we keep gloves, waterproofs, and things to keep people warm, because a lot of people come not appropriately dressed for the Scottish weather, and we encourage them to go out no matter what the weather, because we carry on doing that. And the third thing is there's always going to be people that aren't interested in cycling, and we don't want to preach to the converted. So what we do is we do lots and lots of events where we invite families to come together, people to bring partners and friends, etc., and just enjoy some of our events. Our film nights are extremely popular. So people come along just for a film night, and then they think, actually, do you know what? Cycling might not be too bad, and the next thing we're teaching them to cycle, or we're giving them access to a loan bike. And I think your fourth question was about other barriers. We understand we're not anywhere near some of our European counterparts. There is a lot of fantastic infrastructure going on around Glasgow, and we're very, very supportive of that. So the South City Way, as has been dominant in the video, shows some of the changes, and that in itself is getting more people cycling, and there's lots more exciting projects. What I would say is to other projects is to get your communities involved, let them know that they have a voice that they can use. The more people talking about it, and the more people asking for those infrastructure changes, and the more things that will happen. Was that all of it, or is there anything I missed? Brilliant.
The only other thing I'd like to add here is that going back to that idea of how culture changes things, and actually culture reflects society. If you think of Hollywood and how Hollywood films present, so they portray a vision of a very high carbon, very high consumption lifestyle. And one of the things I think we need to do is start thinking about how culture in the broad, the arts in the broader sense, we need to start asking them to portray a low carbon, low consumption lifestyle to reinforce that their change is possible. And that will help make a difference to add to all the things that Shagufta's talking about.
Hi there. Yeah, the film was fantastic, and it's great to hear all the fantastic work that Bike for Good are doing. You're working with a lot of different diverse communities across Glasgow, and I'm wondering what kind of marketing and outreach you're doing to actually get those communities to come to you. So what things are you doing? How are you actually, getting them in?
Sorry, it's not very clear. So marketing and outreach that we're doing to get people come to us. So we've got two very different sites. We've got West End, which is quite an affluent community, and then we've got Southside, predominantly Govanhill, which is completely the opposite. So we find a different strategy works. In West End, social media, posters, etc. work. In Southside, it's about word of mouth. We work with quite a lot of the community. So some of the young kids that we have, we tell them to go and put the word out, and they get people in. We rely on our volunteers quite extensively, so we've got 10 regular volunteers, and we do flyers in the community. We attend lots of different community events, and we interact with as many of them as possible. So if you just look at Victoria Road, right next to us, there's South Seeds, there's Govanhill Baths, there's the Swap Market, there's quite a lot of other CCF-funded projects, and we try and work alongside them to tap into other people's communities in order to extend our reach to people that otherwise would not. The Govanhill Gears project focuses on exactly that. It's working with small communities that wouldn't otherwise come to cycling. And the Pedal Pathways one was specifically focusing on females and VeloCommunities commuters. So we've got different focuses, and we use a number of different strategies for that. I hope that answers your question.
I'm going to be an advert for involving the arts, which is what I'm here to do. The world of the arts is one of the things that we have to... I've been a theatre director most of my life, spent 25 years running theatres and directing plays. And if you think of the job of a theatre is to get people off their sofas, out and into the seats in the theatre, there's a lot of skills and knowledge within the cultural sector that actually is focused on moving people from not being attenders to being attenders. And I would say that there's probably organizations that you could contact and use and meet up with who are not necessarily connected to the Climate Challenge Fund or the things you're doing, but may also have similar interests and have lots of skills and experience that you can benefit from.
Another question, and if you could say your name and organization, so you're making yourself known and getting...
Hi, we are working with the community members as well, so it's actually, we're quite popular in ladies and children, but we find it really hard to work with the men because they actually get lazy. They prefer to go on car rather than any other way of travel. So how do you tackle with that situation? Because we try to promote them, we try to encourage them, we did held some events, but ladies do come forward, kids come forward, but men doesn't want to do anything. So we would like to know, how do you tackle that?
We do a lot of family-focused activities, so family rides, family maintenance classes. For example, we've done parents and child maintenance classes. Those are probably our main focus, to try and encourage the whole families to cycle together. We actually have an opposite issue. We get a lot of males who are cyclists who come in and they say, you know, I'd love you to teach my wife to cycle, or my partner to cycle, or my kids to cycle. So we don't see that to that same extent. And secondly, our maintenance classes on your fix your own bike sessions are really, really popular with men, so we tend to use them to engage with them about becoming commuters if they aren't already. But a lot of them, maintenance classes not so much, but our fix your own bike sessions, a lot of them already are commuters. So it's about understanding who the audience is and doing things that would appeal to them. And sometimes you might be putting on things that only apply to a niche, but it's about trial and error.
I don't have much to say about that, except that in the theatre world, it's a well-known fact that 70% of theatre tickets are bought by women, but the audiences are about half and half. So I think get the women involved and drag the men along.
Okay, another question. There's one in the front there, and then that one. The woman in the back. And please do share your name and organization.
Yes, hi. My name's Anthony J, and I work for the Blue Veil Shift project in the East End of Glasgow. And we do many of the same things that the Bike for Good project do on a much smaller scale, I'd have to say, and a very much more smaller focused community. And my comment really is that we have, I think, hit a couple of barriers in what we can achieve that are kind of beyond our control. And one of them is that a lot of the people that we're dealing with, they live in tenement properties, and storing bikes for these people is nigh on impossible unless they're prepared to carry bikes up, enormous numbers of flights of stairs. It really doesn't fit with, their lifestyle. So that's a problem that we don't have the power to overcome, except we've started to sort of talk to the council about on-site secure parking for the bikes, storage for the bikes. And that's something that the council's obviously thinking about, but it's very, very slow, and it's only talking at the moment about some pilot projects. Whether we can get involved in that will be another, long debate. Negotiating with the council is taught to us from our experience. And so this is something that means that by virtue of the difficulties we're facing there, we end up shifting who we're dealing with to people who can store bikes, and they're not actually our target group. The target group are the people in the tenements. That's one area that I feel we're unable to really deal with in the way we want to. And the second one is we have a bike hub that's located in a park. And on these dark wintry nights, when it's dark by 3:30, people actually are very reluctant to come into the hub, walk through a dark park and come to a hub to either deliver a bike or take a bike out. And again, we're up against issues that are well beyond our control. How do we get lighting into a park? The council have all sorts of issues about, not just about the cost of it, but they have policies about not lighting some of the parks because it involves cutting trees down and certain other issues that they're very hung up on. So I just wondered if you're having any of the similar issues to us that mean that with these things that are beyond our control, we end up shifting who we're dealing with to the people who are actually not necessarily our target group.
In Govan Hill, we've got a lot of the same issues. So dealing with tenements first, there's a number of different things. First of all, there's a consultation by Glasgow City Council at the moment. So if you go onto our Facebook pages, hopefully today or tomorrow, we've shared that, and we want as many people to interact as possible on that. It's slow, but it's something that we have to do. Secondly, we're very lucky that South Seeds, I don't know whether anybody from South Seeds is here, is right across the road from us, and they've got a wonderful solution with a bike storage pulley system, which we promote to people. Thirdly, a lot of our users are part of housing associations, so we're trying to have dialogue and discussions with them about bike storage. We overcome that through Nextbike, which obviously they don't have to store. Without knowing exactly where you are, it's difficult for me to know if there's a Nextbike station near you, but maybe we could have a discussion about that. There are a lot more sites planned for next year, so I could take some feedback back if there's not one near you, and hopefully we can have a look at putting one there. In terms of being in the middle of a park, and again, not knowing where, geography-wise, exactly where your site is, we do a lot of activity that does take place in the evenings, etc., in Queen's Park, which we're near. And in the winter months, we use a local church and hire out one of the halls for a very, very reasonable price and take some of our activities indoors. So it's literally just a few yards away from the park, but it's a street, there's a door, and it's a lot safer. And we take our kids club and various other things to there. But obviously, we don't have quite the same issue because we do have a shop front near the park, so it only affects one or two of our elements of delivery.
So we have time just for one more question, sorry, and that was over here in the corner. And obviously there will be time to continue the chat over the break.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Stephen Kern from Eco Congregation Scotland. We work with churches all over Scotland in environmental action, so really excited at the opportunity to work with the links you've already got with some of the churches we already work with in the areas of the west and the south of Glasgow. It's quite a simple question. That was a fantastic way of telling the story and sharing it in the film. Have you got plans for a sequel?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, it was just to say that the story was very inspiring. It was a great way to share the work you're doing. But have you plans to do a sequel? Have you plans to do that work again?
I'll let Ben answer that question.
Yes, the next part of the project is a longer film. I think it'll be about 20-25 minutes. So it won't be a sequel quite, because there's a different elements to the program that both Bike for Good doing and the artists are doing. But there'll be something that builds on the fantastic, the charming, funny, and energized film that we've got here, that will develop those young people's skills and show them in an even greater detail and a fantastic light, I think. So keep an eye out for it. The other thing I should say is that the film will be available shortly. Now that it's been launched, it will be available shortly on the Creative Carbon Scotland website. I'm looking at Shagufta, and on Bike for Good's website. So feel free to use it, publicise it, do film nights, get it out there, because it is a really inspiring example, I think, of what both an artist, but also what Bike for Good and similar projects can do.
Great. Well, sorry we don't have more time, but as I say, there is time during the breaks and over lunch to speak with Shagufta and Ben, and a lot of the bike projects, I'm sure, can start sharing how you overcome a lot of these practical challenges. So thank you to Shagufta and Ben.